Hi, I'm Bob Labbitt with Emerson Climate Technologies, and welcome to this edition of Taking It to the Streets. Today I'm in Florence, Kentucky at Emerson Power Transmission, and we'll be talking with Ian Rubin, Marketing Manager for Air Handling Bearings. So let's join Ian and find out what makes the air handling bearings from Browning different from your competitors.
Well, what we do is we take our standard bearings, but the air handling bearings have additional features to ensure quiet, smooth operation in HVAC applications.
Well, yeah, you wouldn't want a noisy blower fan in a church or a school or anything else like that, would you?
Right, it's the last thing we want. So what we do is we take our standard bearings, and the bearings go through a two-stage noise test instead of our standard single noise test. And what that does is it hopefully ensures the noise levels are low in the environment that we really need them to be. So they test them to make sure they're quiet, and then additionally what we'll do is we use a special housing fit, which is the fit up between the housing and the bearing so that the bearing's easily able to move. So what we could do is you could basically move it by hand versus our conventional industrial bearings you can't. It's a little bit tighter fit. Traditional bearings, it's a little bit harder to do that because you don't want that much misalignment. But the reason we do it here is because many HVAC applications have light sheet metal bases and frames, so that allows the installer to get the proper alignment of the bearing. The last thing you want is a bearing that's misaligned, because it's going to generate heat, which is going to break down the lubricant, which is going to cause excessive noise and eventually a premature failure.
So one of the other features of this product is the locking mechanism for the shaft to the bearing. Could you explain that to us?
Yeah, traditional bearings use a set screw locking design where two set screws actually dig into the shaft and lock it. And another design is an eccentric lock collar that's somewhat similar to a set screw, where it's using a cam feature to lock it in. They're good, robust locking mechanisms, but what they do is they distort the inner ring, and the inner ring ends up having a round ball, non-round ball path, and then the concentricity, which is the alignment between the bearing bore and the shaft center, is different. So it ends up being slightly oblong, and it'll result in some imbalance in the system. And what we do is we offer our BOA concentric locking, which is becoming somewhat of an industry standard in HVAC. And you can see it has tangs on the inner ring and then a clamping collar that actually locks down on the tangs and permanently locks it to the shaft. And it gives you a near perfect concentricity. And it's very easy to install. The only tool you really need is a torque wrench with the proper Torx bit. Slide the bearing onto the shaft, and then you hold the collar in place, and all you really need to do is tighten this Torx screw, clamps to the shaft, and it makes removal fairly easy because it eliminates that imbalance. Here's an example of a shaft that we ran in our test lab, and you could see the excessive fretting corrosion that occurred and some of the damage from the set screw. And really what this is a result of the shaft and bearing running non-concentric to each other and a little bit of wobble or imbalance in the system, and the bearing inner ring will move relative to the shaft and cause some oxidation and rust. And contractors know they spend a lot of time removing bearings from a shaft. Where with the concentric lock design, you're running more concentric and more true, and you'll eliminate some of this fretting corrosion, which will make removal a little bit easier. You can never really eliminate all of it, but you can eliminate some of it with a better concentricity and a little bit less imbalance in the system.
Man, I'll tell you, and that's some great information, and I've learned a lot about bearings, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And we thank you for your time, and we welcome you back to future episodes of Taking It to the Streets.